Good evening from New York. I'm Chris Hayes. For about 15 months now, the bulk of the Department of Justice investigation into the January 6th insurrection has, of course, focused on the people who actually stormed the Capitol. And there's still hundreds yet to go, we should be clear. It has mostly been the insurrectionist foot soldiers themselves, generally pleading guilty to low-level charges, a few trials, a few convictions, one acquittal. Or in some cases, they've actually blamed Donald Trump for inciting their criminal behavior. We're going to have more on that later in the show with a defense attorney for one of those individuals. But a lot of that low-hanging fruit, the people who were nabbed on video cameras and who were there, is now gone. And as we've mentioned before, the DOJ is expanding the scope of its investigation to look at the people who plotted the insurrection. And that could include a man named Jason Sullivan. Now, Jason Sullivan is a QAnon supporter and a right-wing social media consultant, perhaps best known for his work with far-right political hatchet man and longtime Trump friend Roger Stone, where he apparently instructed Stone to use so-called swarms of supporters on Twitter to amplify a political message. Now, Sullivan's a busy man. He was also subpoenaed as part of Robert Mueller's investigation into Russian interference in the 2016 election. But today he's coming into focus as part of the investigation into the insurrection itself. According to a new report in the New York Times, Sullivan was plotting the storming of the Capitol back in December 2020, and we know that because there was recording of him doing precisely that.
There's got to be a multiple front strategy. And that multiple front strategy, I do think, is descend on the Capitol without question. Make those people feel it inside, okay? So they understand the people are breathing down their neck. And we've had it, and they've got it, and we've got to be perfectly clear about it. Now, I'm not inciting violence or any type of riots or anything like that, but we need to be loud. It needs to be like Jericho, okay?
You can kind of see what he's doing there, right? He calls for people to descend on the Capitol expressly to intimidate lawmakers, right? So that the idea is that their presence and the possibility of them doing something threatening, people breathing down their necks, makes them essentially steal the election for Donald Trump. He says they need to make Congress feel it. Of course, he says, oh, well, I'm not inciting violence or riots or anything like that, just need to be loud. Generally, when you find yourself having to clarify you're not inciting violence, you're in a weird place. Now, the Times reports that the bipartisan House committee investigating the insurrection has a copy of that recording we just played you, and it was provided to them by this woman you see here named Stacey Burke. Now, it's possible you might remember her name, might not. She was one of those figures that cropped up during that crazy period between the election day and the insurrection, one of the most vocal proponents of Donald Trump's bogus claims of a stolen election. Burke pushed this bizarre conspiracy theory about phony ballots being trucked across the country to stuff boxes. Completely, obviously not true. She even sued to overturn the results of the election, although that lawsuit was thrown out when a judge ruled she did not have standing to bring it because she was not registered to vote. Oops. Now, that led Burke to one of Trump's lawyers, Sidney Powell. It's crowded field, but perhaps the most ridiculous figure in this whole thing.
What we are really dealing with here and uncovering more by the day is the massive influence of communist money through Venezuela, Cuba, and likely China in the interference with our elections here in the United States. The Dominion voting systems, the Smartmatic technology software, and the software that goes in other computerized voting systems here as well, not just Dominion, were created in Venezuela at the direction of Hugo Chavez to make sure he never lost an election after one constitutional referendum came out the way he did not want it to come out.
Now, keep in mind that that was at the actual RNC. Everything she said there is not true. And also, I mean, Powell's theory of the case was that Hugo Chavez, who of course been dead for years, was kind of from beyond the grade rigging voting machines from Venezuela to switch the election. Powell also believed that CIA Director Gina Haspel had been kidnapped in Germany trying to steal a clandestine computer server. Just real, 200-proof conspiracy brain poisoning kind of thing. Again, she was one of Trump's lawyers. She was like in the White House during this period. There's Rudy Giuliani. She's there at the RNC. Well, Sidney Powell introduced Stacey Burke to a right-wing military-themed gang called the First Amendment Praetorian. Interesting name. The First Amendment Praetorian, they often served as hired security for Powell's friend, disgraced national security official Michael Flynn. Apparently, the First Amendment Praetorian were going to serve as security for Ms. Stacey Burke as well. And to do so, the men, and I'm not making this up, this is the reporting, moved into her home under the guise of protecting her from the deep state. A rotating group of middle-aged men invading this woman's home and staying there rent-free. Of course, the militiamen painted this as a favor to Stacey Burke. Burke told a local Arizona reporter the men would say, quote, "You're going to get killed, all this stuff, you're going to save the country, Cupcake." That was their name for her, Cupcake. Burke says she found it demeaning. I can see why. She was also rightfully terrified of the group who had taken over her home, just like moved it and kind of occupied it. Again, they say they're associated with Michael Flynn. They're this kind of weird gray, like grace-based militia. She says the men kept trying to take her cell phone, which contained her alleged dirt on the deep state. According to that same report, quote, when she repeatedly refused to hand over the phone, saying she had protected medical information on it from her previous nursing patients, her security detail stole the phone. Now, eventually they left her with her phone, but not before Burke managed to record the call you just heard with Roger Stone's one-time aide, that guy Jason Sullivan, where we started with. That's the one where you hear Sullivan plotting the insurrection. Burke says she was recording everything because she was essentially living under occupation by this ersatz militia, which had moved in and had taken over her house. This is far from the first time we have heard of a far-right gang's involvement with the plotting of January 6th, of course. They're all over the place. Elmer Stewart Rhodes III, the head of the far-right group, the Oath Keepers, has been charged with seditious conspiracy, fairly rare federal charge, for his role in planning the insurrection, including a so-called quick response team, which was prepared to bring guns to the occupied Capitol. We also know another far-right group, the Proud Boys, were involved in the planning, with investigators also reportedly probing their connection to none other than Roger Stone in the days before the attack. And according to one report, the January 6th committee even believes those two groups were coordinating on the planning. There's some evidence two of those leaders met in a garage, at least according to one report in The Guardian. So that's just one of the many threads the committee is following. Today it interviewed former White House counsel Pat Cipollone, one of the guys who stood up and defended Trump in his first impeachment. He's one of the latest high-profile former Trump allies to testify. According to the Senate's report on the attempted coup, Cipollone was one of the aides who told Trump there would be a mass exodus of government officials if Trump tried to interfere at the Department of Justice to get it to investigate his fake claims of fraud.